I'm Dana Austin, and this is Next Level Awareness.
Hey everyone, I'm Dana Austin, and you're listening to the Next Level Awareness podcast, where we talk about building businesses, boundaries, emotional intelligence, and self awareness. Today I'm talking to Amelia Southworth of AK Inc. And you are on Facebook as AK Inc. and then on Instagram as AK underscore Inc. So that's where people can find you. We'll go over that again at the end. But so Amelia, thanks for coming on today and sharing your business with us. Tell me a little bit about how you got into doing whatever it is that you
What
do.
I do.
All of it. All of it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I have my own little studio where I do permanent makeup, piercings, and then tiny fine line tattoos.
Okay.
I started with permanent makeup, which is or like cosmetic tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, it was kind of spurred by a personal life. Went through a divorce and was like, all right, I've got to figure this out and like build my own little empire so I can be self-sustaining here, hopefully very shortly.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so it started with that. And then I just kind of wanted to expand my services so I
Okay.
could have my own curated little studio. So that's what I have now.
Cool. So, did you take any like classes or anything to learn the permanent makeup stuff and like, do all
Yes. Yeah, actually, my good friend and neighbor was got her brows done by someone and was like, "Oh my gosh, you've got to like this lady does training and this is your earning potentials, and I just think you should do it." And I kind of like looked into stuff like that before. I have no experience in the beauty industry, like
that?
at
Okay.
all. And I had done photography, still do for 16 years before this. Um and I was like, well, how much is it? Like, how much is the training, right? And she was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think it's like this. And I was like, all right, done.
Yeah.
So I took like a training and then like any craft, right? And any
Yeah.
skill learning and
Yes.
going through that learning curve, which is always very fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've definitely been there for a few times in my life.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, and you said you previously had a photography business. So you definitely know as a business owner, and this is, I think, one of the things I see the most that's like a very common misconception out there is that you can just start a business with $0. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know what planet you're on, but like
No.
I mean, the idea of like starting a business or any business for with no money, it's kind of a too good to be true type of thing,
Yeah.
and anyone who promises that you're going to make $1 million in the first year that you're in business is probably like it's a pipe dream. um I
It's
have
a
literally
scam.
never met someone who's like, oh, I just opened my business and I actually made $10,000 my first, like, that's, it takes time to learn things, and I'm sure that, you said if you photography 16 years, right? So how long do you feel like that took you to get off the ground?
Oh my gosh, like 7. Started with just your little entry level camera. I had like a 2-month-old baby, and I started with your entry level camera from Costco that you could
Yeah.
buy that came with like everything, your little kits. And I thought it was $1 million, and the camera was like $600, which was like a ton of money at the
Yeah.
time. I mean, it still is, but when you
Yeah.
get into the photography world, you realize that's not a lot.
Right.
And, and you think that you're good and like you're trying to figure it out and you're giving away all of your services for free,
Yeah.
right? You're just trying to build. And that probably took me a good like 7 years. And
Yeah.
even then, I think in the creative world, there's always somebody better and it's always saturated,
Yeah.
and as technology has gotten better and better and better with the world of blogging and then the world of social media like Instagram, and then everybody was a photographer. Everything gets saturated in the creative world.
Yeah.
Somebody's always better than you, also with way more money to invest in their
Right.
materials. So it took me a good while to like
Yeah.
get my footing there to where I felt confident enough in my
Yeah.
own skills. But there's a big learning curve with anything creative. And I somehow just keep choosing those markets.
It's I'm yeah. I mean, I'm in the financial services business now, but yeah, I started out with just creative, scrapbooking and stamps and cards and all that stuff. And then I like evolved into sewing and embroidery and
Yeah.
and it's very competitive, but it's also
Mhm.
like, as a creative person, people are always just looking around to steal other people's ideas. So even in photography, like you probably developed your own style. And then I'm sure you had people that were like, oh, that's, I'll just do it like this or whatever, and that's the whole thing is like, that's what sets a person apart is they have their own style of doing what they're doing. And like you said, that giving your services away for free so that you can like build a client base and build the referrals. And then what happens is people start expecting it for free or for
Yeah.
like dirt cheap, and it's just like, well, I'm trying to make a living here, and I think it's okay. Like I think for women in particular, it's really hard for us to market ourselves
Sure.
because, you feel almost guilty or like other people make you feel guilty for trying to have an income. And it's
Right.
just like, I deserve to make money too. And I deserve to make money if I'm good at what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
so we have to stop apologizing for that. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's a big hurdle that we have to get over is to just realize that it's okay to make money. Men have no problem with it. It seems like they have no problem, but it's just, there's something about women in general. And I think we're starting to get there, but it's really interesting. So what do you love about like what you're doing now versus, I mean, are you still doing photography some on the side?
Yes. Yep. So I still do photography. I don't do so for the majority of my career, I did like wedding photography and I actually traveled quite a bit and my kids were a lot younger. So I have 4 kids. And as my kids are older now, like my oldest is a sophomore in high school. And I had this thought many years ago. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that like while my kids are teenagers, because it's all your weekends, right? Like, and then
Mhm.
all of your time is behind a computer, which that there's pros and cons of every
Yeah.
career. But I was like, I don't know if I want to spend all my weekends working with my kids being older. And so do I do photography still. I do, but I've kind of transitioned over the years to more families. I do some branding photography for like business owners, like headshots, like fun headshots for them. I've done just like kind of a gamut of photography. So yes, I'm still doing that. But I do live in Arizona where it's very warm for many months out of the year. And unfortunately, like there's always workarounds, but it can be pretty seasonal, right? Like you have like all your fall family photo sessions and you have spring family photo sessions, and then you'll hit months where it's pretty dead. So I like what I'm doing now because I have way more control over it and it's more consistent and I
Mhm.
can, like set my own hours and it's completely different. It's
Mhm.
also very saturated and very competitive. Um, like anything in that beauty industry is, but it's cool because I get to still be creative and very like make a lot of relationships with predominantly women. I'm very extroverted. I like that. That's one of my strengths is I'm pretty good at like chatting with people.
Yeah.
But I can work through the summer and not just have lulls. So it's something that I feel like financially has potential to be more stable,
Mhm.
as I'm now like single mom supporting myself. And
Yeah.
then, but I love photography and will always continue to do that. They're just both completely different, but also like creative outlets, but they still fill a little bit of that void.
Yeah. And I feel like, you've got clients on both sides and you can
Yeah.
kind of intermix them and have, I don't know. There's certain kinds of businesses out there where it's very transactional, where you only see a client once and they really never see them again. But like when you can build
Right.
relationships with your clients, like, that helps, keep people coming back. So as a single mom, um, how did you just like really just throw yourself into it? I mean, I know like going through that, I've been through the process. My kids were young when I got my first divorce, and I just like, it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very hard process to go through, and you have 4 kids. I mean, like and wanting to be a self-sufficient person. I completely understand that too, because that's me. I'm like, I don't want to be dependent on someone else,
Yeah.
and I don't know if people really understand, because if you've never been through a divorce and you just don't, if you haven't been through all that stuff, it's like, it's like a death and a rebirth, and you just have to figure out who you are as a person without that person that you've been with because you were married a long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 15 years.
Yeah. And it's just like, so were you guys young when you got married? Like really
Yeah.
young?
Super young. I got married at 19
Hmm.
and then had a baby a few days after I turned 20. So it was
Wow.
almost exactly 9 months later that I had a baby. So which was really hard. I was like, I'm not ready. But so but I always joke. I was like, well, at least I wasn't a teen mom by like
Right.
4 days. But yeah, I it's what you said resonates so hard. Like it's for sure been a journey of like lots of deaths and little deaths, big deaths, and lots of rebirths. And something that I have found like really personally interesting in that along that journey is of course you're grieving like the life you had, the future that you thought you were going to have, what you knew your family to be like, a little bit of stability and certainty of what you thought your life was going to be like, right? Like we kind of expect all of that grief,
Hmm.
but I found that there was so many other like so much grief outside of like my family unit that I
Hmm.
didn't see coming, like friendships, relationships, familial, like external outside of like your spouse and your kids. So
Yeah.
many changes, like ripple effects happened.
Hmm.
Also, that's constantly in that like defining who you are and where you're at with things and people, because rightfully so, my stability is also part of someone else's stability and
Yeah.
their reality. And when you shake your life up, it shakes up other people's.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. Like figuring all of that out it's a journey, no
Yeah.
doubt. And if
Yeah.
you haven't been through it,
You
you
don't
don't
understand. You
know.
can't, I don't think anybody can possibly understand. I mean, I remember when I was young, remember just having a conversation with some of my friends, and I was young, married at the time, and just kind of I threw a comment out there, and it's just like when people don't have kids, like they don't have kids, and then they're just like, well, if I had kids I wouldn't do this or that, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't really know until you're there and like you're in this situation. And so I think going through my divorce, I was 33, I think 34. I got married like I was with my ex like from very young age, and so I went through all that, and I feel like I didn't even know myself when I got married, and I was like, how in the world, like why it's
Who am
really,
I?
and I'm not saying that like people can't stay married forever, if you actually find the right person, but it's just like I've kind of tried to teach my daughter, like, don't just try not to marry the first guy that comes along, just because,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And like, make sure you know who you are as a person before you
Yes.
get in a relationship with someone else, and make sure that you understand what your personal goals are in your life. And
Yeah.
like, it's hard to know at that age. And I really probably shouldn't probably have been married until I was like 30. Like,
Well, I don't think anyone should probably be married till they're 30. I
yeah,
mean, which is really unfair to women. If you
it
want to
is.
have kids, your biological clock doesn't really care if you know yourself or not. But like, yeah, I mean, I have definitely like thank goodness we mature, right?
Yes.
To where you realize, oh my gosh, like our 20s are really the time where we get to know ourselves. And it's hard. It's hard to do when you get married really, really young, which some people make it,
Yeah.
which more power to them
Yes.
because your relationship is really hard. But I think learning yourself and learning boundaries, it
Yes.
naturally comes with time and maturity. And it can be a real rocker though when you like decide to like, hey, I'm gonna start having boundaries in my life when maybe I didn't so much before. And that shakes up a lot of things. And some relationships stay and sometimes they don't, or people grow and change. You know,
I'm starting to think that we all kind of just need marriage counseling from like the get-go. Like it needs to be like, I really think that we could all, you know, if we could teach our children as they're growing up that it's okay to talk to a mediator type person. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're not communicating properly. It just means that, and then also not only as a couple, but as like an individual, I think we all need more, like I don't know if I would say I would have been embarrassed, but like in high school, like nobody ever, I don't know if I ever talked to my guidance counselor. I know one time. Like all I thought that they were there for was to like make sure that you were, you know, if you were a bad student, you were talking to a guidance counselor, you know, so it was like, it was a bad thing if you were talking to somebody like that. And it was a bad thing if you had a therapist, and it was a bad thing if you like, you know, had issues. And so I'm like, I feel like maybe we need to start making it like, okay.
Only the weird kids have therapy, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's like, oh, I wouldn't want to tell anybody that I'm, you know, but like, I think that we need to like really expand on personal growth and self-awareness and, you know, when kids are younger. And so that like, they can really start to figure out who they are and what they want and start listening instead of just telling them what to do, you know?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I was just told what to do.
Same girl.
In a line with like, I was like, okay, well, this is what they told me to do, but this doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know why I'm doing it. And, you know, college was like such a waste of money when I went, because I literally had no idea what I was doing there. And I had no like real clear path that I was on. So I wound up dropping out after my first year. And I was just like, well, but I'm an entrepreneurial minded person too. So that kind of like feeds into that. So,
well, I was accepted to a college, and then young underdeveloped brain told my parents, oh, I'm just not going to go, and I'm going to marry, you know, this guy. And they were like, oh, great. So that was my, you know, to where I was like, looking back and you're like, would I do that as a mom to my kid? No, I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, I think I would be like, hey, you should get your education, you know? And my daughter is going to start like cosmetology school next school year. And so it doesn't have to be this 4-year degree that's not going to pay you much. But, you know, I didn't see a divorce coming for me.
Oh, nobody does.
You know? Right. Nobody does. And there's always that like catastrophe scenario. Like, what if they die, or what if they get seriously hurt? And it has to fall on you. Yeah. So I want to be self-sufficient. I totally am like entrepreneurial minded. I worked our entire marriage. He is a medical provider, and there's a lot of schooling that came in our marriage, and you know, actually the whole time. And I was definitely supporting him through that. But as a byproduct, I didn't have a formal career.
You sacrificed.
Or education. I don't have a degree. I don't even have an associate's. I have 1 semester of college, you know, so I've self-taught in everything I do, but my personality is one to where I did the taxes and I did the finances. And so now like really running my own business, that does help me out a little bit. I'm like, okay, I did all these things in our marriage. Like I can transfer that over to my business, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you seem like the type of person like me, like I dropped out after my first year of school, and I was like, I just want to go make money. I can't do this. Like, I'm not going to go into, you know, all this debt for something that I don't even know, you know, what the end goal is. So, but over the years, like I've taught myself everything that I needed to know. I went out and found it and taught myself. And I feel like sometimes when you're interested in something, you actually learn it better because you're, you know, focused on it. And so like, I know people, so in my industry right now, I'm in financial stuff. Like there's licenses I have to have, and there's tests you have to pass. And I see people take the tests like over and over and over again because they can't pass. And no judgment. I mean, I was a horrible student in school. So I was like expecting, all of it was really hard at first when I started because I was like reading a book. It was like reading and I'm like, this is so boring. I would fall asleep. But then I figured out how to study for myself.
Yeah.
And then because I was so focused on the end goal of this is what I want and this is how I have to get there, I passed every one of my tests on the first try. And so I was just like, I don't know how I did that. I feel like there was like a glitch in the system or something like every time because I would be like, I don't even know those questions.
Hungry for it.
It was crazy, but I was just like, and I hear people say the same thing. Like you get in there and you sit down and you see the question and it's like, I'm on the wrong test. This is the wrong test. Like, cause you're just the way it's funny how it's set up. But I do feel like people like us that like when we want to know how to do something, you wanted to know how to branch out into the makeup and tattooing and all that stuff. So I'm sure that you like put in the time to learn and you get to learn from other people's experience and other people's mistakes and what not to do. And so like sometimes you're able to do it faster, than maybe someone else who came before. But yeah, so I love that like we have that in common because I understand you a lot. and I'm all about helping other people in business and get, build your client base and all that stuff because it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard because I feel like sometimes people look down on you, like not you, but as a business person, I feel like sometimes it's like people think, oh, you're just trying to sell me something. You're just, you don't really want to know me. You just want to tell me. And it's like, no, I'm trying to make sure that you're getting what you need and you're getting something high quality, right? Versus like what else is out there, because I'm sure people have horror stories for like getting permanent makeup done and stuff like that. So
there's botch jobs for sure. There's all of that. Like, and this is what sometimes it's like, you're going along trying to build your own business and then you hit these like roadblocks and you're like, oh man, like, and it's like what you were saying, anyone who's like, oh yeah, it was overnight success, you're like, you're a liar.
Yeah.
You're a liar.
Yes.
You are trying to tell me something because that's a lie.
Yeah.
Because you hit these roadblocks and you're like, oh, and for me, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so saturated. And then like those self-doubts come in because you're like, how am I ever going to make it? This is a dog eat dog world.
Yes.
Like, and nowadays with marketing, it's like, it's all social media, right? And if you spend even a half of a second in any Facebook group, it's everyone just throwing out to the void.
Yes.
Hey, I've got this. Hey, I've got this. And you're like, okay, all right. I'm just another voice. How do I differentiate myself? How do I do this? How do I actually make people know that hi, I'm real and I'm friendly and hire me. Like, we'll have a good time. Like, and you're in the financial world where it's also a dog eat dog world.
Oh, yes.
Right? And you're like, it's hard. You get those roadblocks and it's like, okay, how do I do this? And how do I overcome this? And sometimes some weeks are great and other weeks you're like, all right, well,
sometimes you just want to give up and go home. You know what? Never mind. I'll just go find a W-2 job and be done with it. Cause it is,
it wasn't just it used to just be SEO. Like, how do I figure out SEO?
Yeah.
So the website pops up. Now it's SEO plus Instagram marketing and Facebook marketing. And how do I run ads? And how do I make reels? And how do I do this? And how do I make one go viral? And how do I even get noticed? And like, it's so much pressure and there's so many hats. Like social media is amazing.
Yes.
It adds a lot more hats or plates or balls, whatever, you want to visualize.
Yeah. And so it's not only just, and that's, a good point. Cause it's not only just, you're really good at what you do.
Not my skill.
Right. And so then you have to, you either have to find somebody who's really good at the social media and the marketing for you, or you have to, and there's a lot of like,
that requires money too.
Yeah. That's more money. And then you have to like, but a lot of that stuff can't even be done by someone else. It really has to be done by you. Like the reels and the, the videos and stuff like that. It's like, you kind of have to figure out how to manage your time in order to do that. And time management as a single mom with a business owner, like it's just, there's a lot of like balls in the air. Do you feel like you work 24/7 sometimes?
I feel like, well, so I have been in like trying to make a name for myself world for a long time. And not that I'm like wildly like successful, like, oh, I have it figured out. I did, but I feel like even if I'm not in it, like my brain's in it, right? Like that pressure's there
Yeah.
all the time.
Yes.
So with my studio, it's a little bit nicer. I do enjoy this aspect of it that when I'm done with work, it kind of stays at work.
Yes.
Photography is like you're always editing and you owe it, like kids go to bed and you're on your computer and like, you know what I mean? I can do all of it in my sleep. I'm very confident in that. I know what I'm doing, but it's very time intensive.
Yes.
So I do appreciate that. But like, it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't posted in a week, or I haven't done this, or crap. Like, you know what I mean? So your brain's kind of always in it, and pressure is for sure always there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it takes a special personality, like a special person to be like do what we do, like to have your own business and to be involved in all of this, because it's just not for everyone, you know?
Well, and I feel like you have to, which at least what I'm trying to do is like, it's the long game, right? Like some people, I do feel like, and there's a lot of extenuating circumstances as to why, but like some people get in it and they really are able to build very quickly. It's like they had a good network, or maybe they had a before, or a presence online or whatever. But the reality is for most people, it's the long game. It's the slow, long game of going through the weeks or months where it's very slow and stagnant and you're not making a lot, but you're pouring a lot into your business.
Yes.
So but like my reality is such that I'm in the long game. You know what I mean? Like, getting divorced, regardless if I ever get married again or not, I want to be able to support myself.
Yes.
Right. Like after being a stay at home mom while also doing photography, but like predominantly stay at home mom, so much security is taken away.
Yes.
You know, especially when you put someone through school where they're very successful and they're a medical provider and you're like, oh my gosh, I get none of that, which, you know, that's fine. That's part of how the cookie crumbles. But for me, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. Like at all. You know what I mean? I'm 6 of 7 children.
Yeah.
And my parents did not make a lot, you know. We ate like fruit cereal from like the peach tree in our front yard. Like, you know, they didn't have a lot of money. And so financial security is really important to me. And so I'm like, regardless of however like my life turns out, which by the way, once you get divorced, how I look at it is I'm like, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Even if you get married again, you never know. Like,
that
I'm like, hey, I'm in it for the long game because I want to be able to support myself and I want to make something of myself. And it's not anyone else's responsibility to pay for my kids' braces.
Right.
The future, except mine. You know what I mean? So that's the mentality that I have, is like, okay, I'm in it for the long game. And if I keep grinding and building and trying, like, what can I build in 5 years?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you're not looking at 6 months down the road. You're looking at 5 years from now. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss is the long game, you know? And there's a book out there, actually, I don't know if you read much, but I love Simon Sinek. And
I love Simon Sinek.
I've
seen him live.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. I have like the biggest, nerdiest crush on him.
So he talks, you're like,
Yeah. I know. Like, so I found him with the Start With Why, but there's a book that I got on Audible and I listened to it, and it's called The Infinite Game. And he talks about like the long game and just being in business and looking at the future. And one of his comparisons was kind of like Apple when they first came out with the iPod versus the other MP3 players on the market. And he was like, you know, Apple didn't have the perfect product. Like the iPod wasn't the perfect product. He had an iPod versus I think he said it was called the Zune or something. And he was like, the Zune was like, it was superior in every way, but the iPod just blew them out of the water because usability, user friendliness, like just their market
always excelled at that.
Yeah. And they were like, well, we don't have to have a perfect product. We just have to know who our market is, you know? And so it was like, it's a really good book. Like, it was so good that I was listening to it on Audible, and I like immediately when it was done I started listening to it again because I was just like, I think I missed a lot of the like really good stuff in there. So I mean, there's sometimes when I'll get a book like that and I'll listen to it and then I'm just like, I have to go buy the actual book so that I can,
Yeah.
take the notes and stuff. So I mean, I'm a huge reader. I love reading. I love learning stuff. Have you ever read the E-Myth?
No, I love reading, but I have not heard of that one.
Yeah, so the E-Myth is actually the entrepreneurial myth, and it's so good. It's by Michael Gerber, and it's very much a book about like just the idea that people have about business and starting a business and what goes into running a business and how a lot of people, a good majority of the people that wind up in business start out as the practitioner, like the plumber who works for someone else and he's like, well, I have all this plumbing experience and I could make a lot more money if I just go out on my own and open my own plumbing business. And then yet like they don't realize that if you open your own business, you're not only the practitioner, but you're also the owner of the business who has to wear all of those hats.
With a product.
Yes. And so you have to like understand that eventually, if you're going to build a big business, you're not even going to be the practitioner at the end of the day. Like you're going to have, a whole group of plumbers. And you wouldn't even really, ideally, unless you really, really love plumbing, ideally, it's kind of like, so it's a really good book. I think you'd probably really like it. I think I've read it like 2 or 3 times because it's just full of really good stuff. So, I think you and I need to get together, like
yes.
for sure. Because we just have so much in common and I think we get each other for sure. Having gone through the divorce stuff and all of that. And it is hard. I mean, it's hard to like, that was my thing. And I kind of go into my clients with my financial stuff. When I sit down with people and they've been through a divorce, they understand. But even with younger people, I sit down and I'm like, okay, well, no one ever plans to get divorced, right? When you're getting married, you never plan like you're going to get divorced. But when I set up people's like help them with their financial stuff, I'm like, you don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now. So, each person should ideally have their own retirement account because no matter what else is available out there, like, if both have one and they can contribute to both equally, then at the end of the day, if you stay together, great. Like
you're double set.
Yes. But I've seen too many people over the years who it's like the wife was a stay-at-home mom and didn't have any kind of retirement. And then the husband who went to work and saved all that money feels like it's all his because he was the one working. And it's just like, I just feel like it's easier to just, you don't plan for divorce, but you plan for like the what ifs and just kind of, go from there. So I definitely just try to use that experience to help, and I don't want my clients to ever think that I'm voting that they're going to get divorced, but it's like, I mean, the reality is 50% of marriages end in divorce anyway. So it's like, why not, take the initiative to plan for it ahead of time, just in case.
Well, I know, like, just piggybacking off what you said, because it's more like, it's like hindsight, it's wisdom, right?
Yes.
Because you've been through it. And so in some ways it kind of makes me grateful that I have gone through it. While it was for sure the hardest, like darkest, like soul rebirthing, which also means death time of my life, I can now take it and I like talk to like my daughter about it. You know what I mean? Not to where I'm like, oh, you will get divorced, but it's like, hey, let's be a little bit wiser, right? Like, hey, let me share some of my wisdom of what I've gone through, or like, just like what you're talking about, like, and I wouldn't have that had I known,
right?
Because the environment that I had growing up was like, you're going to grow up and you're going to be a mom. You're going to grow up and you're going to be a mom. You're going to grow up and you're going to be a mom. Like, that's what women do. That's what girls do. And it's like, great, but what if? And I am living in the what if, it's not for better, not for worse, I just am, so absolutely, like, that is definitely part of it. Because I'm in that boat, right, where I'm now like, oh shoot, I need to build retirement and I need to learn investing and I need to learn all this stuff
Yeah.
for me and for my own financial future, because I don't have that
Right.
one else anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I can pass all that on to my kids, and I wouldn't have that if
Yeah.
you didn't go through it.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. My daughter is 17 and my son's 19. So I
Yeah.
definitely like not that I favor my daughter over my son, but you're right. I mean, like it's like because we're women and because, we have daughters, it's like we want to make sure that they understand that like, you can be married, but you can also be your own person. And I really feel like,
Actually,
yes, you should be your own person. And I kind of think that like, I don't know, how do I say this? It's almost like when you're raised to expect to get married and have kids, that's just your identity, right?
yeah.
Like that was like expected to be your identity. And like I was never really taught that I could have more, like be some people just knew. I don't think that was me. Like I didn't just know, oh, I can be this career person and, have a good career. And I think it was kind of like, when I was growing up, it was almost like you either have a career or you have kids, or you wait a long time and then you have kids when you're older. And it's just like, I I just don't want her to think that that's like she can have everything she wants and you
Exactly.
can manage it. You just have to have the right support system and the right people to kind of teach you and mentor you along the way. And I
Yeah.
think it's just I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I had that in my life necessarily. I mean, my parents are awesome, but I moved far away from home when I was very, very young. I moved to Arizona when I was 19. So
Yeah.
like they're back in Iowa in the Midwest and it's just like it was a time when we didn't have cell phones and long distance, and I mean long
Right.
distance was like expensive. So,
So expensive.
it's like you grow up really quick when you move that far away
Mhm.
and you just kind of feel like you have to learn things on your own. And I'm sure I could have asked a lot more questions, but I just felt like I needed to, be the adult and do that on my own. And so, it's very hard. So yeah, definitely um we definitely have to get together for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me like what's like your specialty right now? Like what are you doing the most of right now in your business?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am like fine line tattoos are newer for me. So I'm like practicing, growing that while also still gaining like more training and all of that, right?
Okay.
So that is like my budding newest
Mm-hmm.
service. But my specialty is I started with brows, so that's like a good base. But and then piercings. Piercings have really taken off
Okay.
that way. So that's fun. And then I actually, and this is like more of like my long term goal that I'm not quite there yet, but I dipped my toe into a little bit, is I was able to train somebody else
Oh, awesome.
on brows. And that was really fun. And I was like, okay, so this might be something I can add on in the
Mhm.
future too. But right now it's still like growing that. But piercings and like figuring that market out and all of that is like a really fun, it's like my baby right now.
Yeah. Well, I
It's
know I
like,
feel like we kind of have that, like we gravitate towards like one thing that we just love doing. And
yeah, it's
it's nice.
really fun. Like I get to meet so many more people.
Hmm.
Um, that way, like it's brought a lot more faces through my door, which I just love. Like I am for sure an extrovert at heart, and I just like people. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So after a long day, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm tired. I can be quiet, except you have 4 kids. It's never quiet. But,
Right.
but you know what I mean? But it's fun. Like I'm able to meet so many more people. So I enjoy that aspect of it.
Cool. So how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So on Facebook, I have a Facebook page that's like newer. It's just AK Inc. And
Okay.
then and that stands for my name. It's Amelia Kate. And
Okay.
then but Instagram is where I'm the most on there, or the most active, and it's AK_inked. And in both of those, I have like booking links that like make it really easy for people to, book appointments or check out pricing or all of that. And I have a little website budding. It's not live yet. It's coming. It's one of those like building blocks of starting your own business.
Yes.
So yeah, so you can find me on there, and like I always tell people, I'm like, shoot me a message. Like I'm really responsive.
So what
Like,
are your hours like? Is it mostly like daytime hours? Are you flexible?
yeah, mostly daytime hours, like Tuesday through Friday. And then every other weekend,
Mhm.
I will take on some clients, usually like by like message and appointment only. Because in my, the reason I also have gravitated more towards this than like going and getting, like your standard job is in, I really also being single and getting to know yourself again more. I really do a lot of outdoor stuff. And so I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I want to build this so I can also like on my solo weekends without my kids, I go and I do a lot like
Yeah.
hiking and all those adventures. So like every other weekend I'll take some like
Okay.
special events when people message me. So I'm
Cool.
flexible.
That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I am so excited. I mean, you're an amazing person,
Oh
and
my gosh.
you know,
Thank you.
you're you're gonna get through all of this. And I have no doubt that in 5 years your business is gonna be like just amazing. And
Thank
I
you.
can't wait to see it. So thank you so much, everybody
Yeah. Thanks
else.
for having me.
Thank you for listening. And make sure that you subscribe to the Next Level Awareness podcast, wherever you find your podcasts. You can find us on Google, Apple Podcasts, pretty much everywhere. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show, please email me at nextlevelawarenesspodcast@gmail.com. And you can look us up on Instagram and Facebook, same titles. So anyway, that's it. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.